Trixie Ngado is also going to be giving us some information on how work is going out there following a particular person from one place, from point A to point wherever she works, and giving us information and just taking us through what some of Kenyan laborers go through on a day-to-day basis. This is Morning Express, and we welcome you to the show. Well, on the question of the day today, what we'd like to find out from you: do you think that the Kenyan government is doing enough to protect the Kenyan worker? Do you think the government is doing enough to protect the rights of the workers? Is the government doing enough to protect the rights of the workers? We do know that at this particular time and point, one of the things that, of course, that we look forward to as laborers, or all laborers look forward to, is an increase in their pay, minimum wages and all that. And that sometimes has not been coming forth. But this year, of course, is one year that is going to be more brutal than others, given that most workers are actually looking forward to just holding on to their job, let alone getting any pay increase. If anything, we're talking about pay cuts and layoffs. That's all going to be what we're going to be looking at today. And of course, today being Labor Day, we are right here on KTN News. We're going to be bringing you live Labor Day. Not sure whether we can call them celebrations. Let's just say that we're going to be bringing you what's going to be happening on Labor Day. Of course, waiting to hear from the Kotu Sec Gen, and also the President weighing in on what to expect as we continue to watch the economy as it unfolds with COVID-19. For now, we're going to look at what's making headlines on the dailies. And as usual, we start off with the Standard, where the headline is Sonko takes on Uhuru. Now, many of us, of course, are pretty familiar with what's been happening in Nairobi County. And it started off with Mike Sonko coming into power with a deputy, Polycarp Igathe. Then that did not work out. Very soon into their taking over Nairobi County, Polycarp Igathe threw in the towel and said because he's not able to please his boss or work with his boss for one reason or the other, he resigned. We, of course, expected, or many expected, that Sonko just might get a deputy. That was not forthcoming. And fast forward, it got to a point where Nairobi County literally was grinding to a halt. Why? Because of the leadership wars that were playing up at the top. So there was, of course, pressure on the national government, and Jubilee particularly, to take over Nairobi County as a result of the wars that were going through. And that happened because at some point, Mike Sonko signed off some of the major functions of Nairobi County to the national government. Of course, there was hue and cry as to whether that was legal or not. But at some point, there seemed to be a bit of a calming down until the governor for Nairobi County had a meeting with the deputy president, and then we suddenly saw a change of heart, and this is what is playing out now. So Sonko has said that he's going to take up this and take it legally to challenge it in court, the takeover of certain functions by national government, because according to him, and I quote what he has said in one of the statements, he says that when we started this process, the president had all good intentions with the taking over of those functions. But some of his officers, especially those who hate me, have hijacked the process to embarrass and frustrate me with impunity. This is the time to terminate the transfer of functions deed. So there seems to be a change of heart, whether it is after the meeting between Deputy President and Mike Sonko, or it is a change of heart from Mike Sonko himself. We wait to see how that's going to play out. So we do know that Okiya Omtata had taken this matter to court, saying that the takeover was illegal because there was no public participation, and a barrage of other things that possibly, or he claims, were not done legally. So as a result, that is a matter that is in court. So is Mike Sonko going to win back the functions of Nairobi County? Let's wait and see. So that is what is making the headline right there. There's also on the front page of the Standard, the future of work, how virus disrupted the industry. And this, of course, is highlighted on page 2, where workplaces will never be the same after the pandemic. And This is what we're calling the new normal, but I think we need to change it from the new normal to normal because that seems to be what is going to happen. So the workplace will, of course, never be the same again, with people coming up with very, very creative ways of ensuring that they can still continue with their work, albeit without necessarily reporting to an office or a certain space. This, of course, has been enhanced and developed by the use of technology. We have now Zoom meetings and webinars that are taking place left, right, and center. Training sessions are taking place online, something that maybe we could have been doing before but was not explored. But now, because of COVID-19, we have no choice but to be innovative and ensure that we do things differently. So that's what this particular article is talking about. And I'll just quote what Professor Bitangen Demo has said, that many future jobs may not be permanent and pensionable. So this needs to be something that we wake up to. In the future, companies are not going to be looking at employing you on a permanent and pensionable basis. Why? Because it's going to be out to productivity. It's literally going to be your productivity that's going to set you apart from other workers as a result of where we are now. So they're going to be looking at hiring people in anticipation of, not like before where it was in anticipation of the work that you can deliver. So you'd agree on a contract and they would hope and believe that you're going to deliver certain amounts of work. But now it's going to be your delivery that will, dictate how much you get paid. So this is an interesting article to read, looking at the future of where employment is headed. It also would be, in line with looking at what's making headline on the Daily Nation. And on the headline of the Daily Nation is Painful Labor Day. And this, of course, is highlighting what the plight of the laborer is, particularly given that this would be the day where we would expect announcements to be made of an increment of minimum wages and an increment in pay, maybe say job security and that kind of thing. But with COVID-19, that, of course, is not going to be the case. And as opposed to other days where there's pomp and color, although one really would question as to when was the last time we actually had a Labor Day that had really pomp and color and specifically celebrated the laborer. It would be hard to scratch your head and find that particular day. But today, of course, being a day that is even worse than those that we have had before. So no pomp and color on the new pay rise for workers. Instead, the conversation will be about retaining and remaining jobs in cushioning thousands who've been laid off. As we speak, we know that we have many who have been laid off as a result of COVID-19. We know that, of course, we have others who've taken pay cuts, and this has been with no choice. On page 3 of the Standard, Atwoli playing politics while workers' rights are abused during COVID-19 crisis. Today happens to be a day, that's on page 3 of the Standard, today happens to be a day where we know the SecGen for Kotu, it's his day, so to speak, because this is the day where he would give direction for the laborers. He would give direction in terms of where the worker is today. But we have seen him, of course, engaged and involved in frontline politics, and particularly succession in, focus on 2022. Remember, not too long ago, he was in public saying that Uhuru Kenyatta is still young and cannot go anywhere. He has also been on record saying that the deputy president should not be trying to take over presidency too soon. He's also on record saying that we have a coalition. Remember, I think not too long ago, we had a number of leaders who met at his place for Nyamachoma, apparently, and some of the things that came up in terms of discussion was coalitions between the president, Gideon Moi, and other factions right there. So is the SecGen for Kotu playing politics as opposed to doing what he needs to be doing, and that is protecting the rights of the laborer? An interview that was done by Standard is featured on page 3, and that mainly highlights what he has to say about that. So there you go. Also, in matters education, we have an article there on page 4. Remember, there's been a back and forth between parents and particularly schools, private schools, on whether parents should pay fees or not. And there has been a banter between the two, with private schools, particularly schools, saying that school fees still needs to be paid because they also need to develop online tuition and online material for children to continue with their education, whereas parents feel that some parents feel that they should not be paying fees by virtue of the fact that their children are at home. So court tells parents to pay only half of the fees. So there is this matter was taken to court. So the court has ruled that parents should continue paying, albeit only half the fees. We now have a new CDF, Chief of Defense Forces, in place. Uhuru names Kibochi to take over from Mwadhedhe at the Kenya Defense Forces. So that's the CDF, Chief of Defense Forces, and President Uhuru Kenyatta has appointed Robert Kibochi the Chief of Kenya Defense Forces. This is after, according to this article, apparently Mwadhedhe declined to take another year because, according to him, he said it would send the wrong signal to the forces in regards to promotions and all that. So we have a new CDF. The top general now is none other than Kibochi, taking over from Mwadhedhe, and this is effective from 11th of May. That's in another 10 days from now. So there you go. That's information that you might want to have. Now, corona cases hit 396 as ministry mum on 1.3 billion. Remember, the internet and social media was awash with figures that had been given by the Ministry of Health of how the expenditure has gone so far in light of trying to deal with COVID-19. And of course, on social media, one of the things that was highlighted was what you'd call high tea, very high tea. So far, we've spent 4 million Kenyan shillings on tea when it comes to fighting coronavirus. Whether they have explained that well or not remains to be seen, but information gaps, of course, leave Kenyans speculating. And like you know, they say that nature abhors a vacuum. And when nature abhors a vacuum, what that means is that if they don't give us enough information in regards to how that money has been spent, then question, of course, raises, and questions are raised. And as a result, Kenyans and others are left to fill in the gaps for themselves. And it can only be thought that that money maybe was not used in the best way possible. So 1.3 billion is in question here, and there are claims that the funds meant to tackle the virus were misappropriated and used on non-essentials. And there's also a breakdown that has been given in numbers of how those cases have been, panning out in the last 24 hours. So do get yourself a copy of the Standard to see how that is being defended. I don't know if you have seen those memes that were doing rounds not too long ago of the human being the problem. And of course, there were pictures, beautiful pictures of landscapes showing different areas which have literally breathed a sigh of relief by virtue of the fact that now there's a lot more, a lot less being done worldwide in terms of nature. So the lonely mountain, it is beautiful, but there is no one around to climb. And that is talking about Mount Kenya. There are pictures, beautiful pictures that we've seen of Mount Kenya, particularly in the recent past. But this particular article highlighting that there is no one to climb it. And maybe we need to have no one climb it for a while, given that that just seems to affect the ecosystem in a negative manner. Hope as Ebola treatment drug shows signs of curing COVID-19. Again, the vaccine, the search for the vaccine for COVID-19 is still elaborate and still being looked for, but there seems to be hope as those researching and finding out may find a ray of hope in the Ebola vaccine. So hope as Ebola treatment drug shows signs of curing COVID-19. There's also been talks of talks of cures being found from malaria queen and medicines of malaria. So let's hope that that can be found sooner or later, because COVID-19, of course, being a pandemic that has hit the world in a way that we have not seen in the recent past. I think they're only relating it to having happened before during the Spanish flu, which happened quite some time ago. Now, digital learning on course to take off, says agency boss. of course, given the times that we're in, this is on page 12 of the Standard. Digital learning is something that needs to take off and has, of course, been forced to metamorphosize and grow exponentially by virtue of the fact that right now we are forced to work from wherever we are by use of technology. Matters entertainment. Court refuses to lift ban on acclaimed lesbian romance movie. Many of us, of course, will remember this particular movie, Rafiki, done and directed by Wanuri Kahio, and it has been banned by the Kenyan government by virtue of the fact of its content. And according to this particular article, the court has refused to lift the ban. Get yourself a copy of the Standard and see what that is all about, and also just get the details of where that particular movie is in terms of the accolades that it has received, despite the fact that right here locally in Kenya it has not been aired and has not been allowed, and according to that article it's not about to be aired. Current former port managers only candidate for KPA hot seat. We do know there's a seat that is vacant and available, and this particular article is highlighting and giving details of who is available for that particular seat. And yeah, that's where we will wind up the newspaper review for the Standard. But let's look at the Daily Nation. I've already mentioned the headline, and that is Painful Labor Day, and that of course is highlighting what kind of a Labor Day we're looking forward to today. It's not one that many laborers are going to look forward to in any form or way, and this is of course because rather than even look at pay rises, we're looking at job cuts, we're looking at pay cuts, and it is now a question of literally survival for the worker. Why mass testing has failed to take off is on page 3 of the Daily Nation. This is a follow-up story to what had been done before. Remember, there was the battle between the influenza center in Kenya and KEMRI, trying to fight who should lead this particular war. But this particular article is talking about some of the basic things that we do not have as a country. For instance, just those swabs that are used to pick samples from the nose and the throat for you to be able to have a successful test for COVID-19 are lacking, and the Health Chief Administrative Secretary, CAS, Rashid Aman, giving details as to why we have not been able to have mass testing being done. We do know that it's going to start off in Kawangware. I believe it's today, or was it yesterday, that was starting off for mass testing. And this, of course, is important because it would finally give us the real figures that we have on the grounds. In Kenya, we have a saying that vitu kwa ground ziko different. So this would give us literally what is on the ground if we're able to mass test. So currently, we are at 396 positive cases in the country. But that, of course, some are challenging that figure by virtue of the fact that it is very minimal, given that we have not been able to do mass testing. We're supposed to be doing 37,000 tests per day. But guess what? We are on 700. Labor Day, pain for workers that amid jobless cuts. That's, again, an article there. Cushion employees to protect jobs. The state is being urged, and this is by World Bank Country Director Felipe, who is saying that the government needs to come in to cushion the workers to ensure that we maintain the economy and keep it running. Remember, not too long ago, we had the Ministry of Health giving a green light for some restaurants to open, but of course with very, very stringent measures, and they would have to apply for a special license for that to be done, and that is just to keep the economy running and to keep it going. On page 8, human interest stories that have been running on, the coronavirus, and especially focusing on quarantine and isolation centers. Will I get back to normal? Time will tell. That is a question being asked. And of course, this is a story of people who've gone to quarantine, who've come out of quarantine and isolation centers, wondering whether they'll go back to normal. Remember, one of the things that, one of the challenges that they have faced so far is the challenge of stigmatization. You can imagine with what is going around and the information we have now of COVID-19 being an airborne or one that can be passed through, close proximity to others. Once you leave a quarantine center or an isolation center and go back to your community, one of the things that you're likely to face is stigmatization, with people wondering, should they come close to you? Should Should they stay away from you? And will you infect them with COVID-19, even if you came out negative? The fact that you've been to an isolation center already sets you apart from everybody else. Of course, the story becomes worse if you had tested positive and people know about it, which should not be the case. But of course, scientists still struggling to give us information and fill us in as to whether you can even be reinfected once you have recovered. Machakos to start testing for COVID-19, and this again is talking about mass testing, and we need counties to step up and ensure that, first of all, they are ready. Should there be an upsurge, which is expected, which we should be prepared for. We are always taught to work with worst case scenario, and should there be an upsurge in COVID-19, then counties need to be ready. So Machakos are taking up that challenge and saying that they're going to start testing, mass testing for COVID-19. On matters politics, page 10 of the Nation has Ruto friends now train their arsenal on Jubilee Secretary General Raphael Tuju. And we know that Jubilee has definitely been going through a lot of turbulence, and this has been for a while. And this, of course, is to do with their leadership. We know that not too long ago, the Deputy President is on record as complaining that there has been changes in the Jubilee leadership, the National Executive Council, which he said that he was not privy to and was not happy about. We also have Kositani, who has come out to almost be the deputy president's spokesperson, coming out to say that we shall vet and look at every decision that is made by the Secretary General. So, of course, that tells you that things are not rosy, at the Jubilee Party organs and how things are running. But decisions to make changes in Kirinyaga, Kajiado assemblies revoked. That's according to Caleb Kositani, who says that it was not procedural, it was not done well, and as a result, it should be revoked. Will that be done? Let's wait and see. We do know that the SecGen, we have the likes of Murathe, have been very, very vocal, saying that Jubilee Party is running as it should, and nobody should question that. So, of course, that lets you into the fact that things are not doing very well at the Jubilee Party. Media ought to call out leaders who don't wear masks in public, and this is an article written by Peter Mwaura, basically saying that leaders who are saying that we should be wearing masks but in public are not wearing masks, then should be called out, because again, that is literally speaking from both sides of the mouth. You say that we wear masks, but you do not wear masks yourself. County News, defiant Sonko vows to end transfer of functions deal. We already looked at that in the Standard, and that, of course, is to do with leadership wrangles that led to the taking over of certain major functions of Nairobi County by the national government. But Sonko now up in arms, saying that that was done illegally, and as a result, he says that he is under attack as the governor of Nairobi. He mentions and says that the president had all good intentions at the point where they were taking over. However, there are those people, according to him, who hate him and would like to embarrass him, and as a result have taken over that particular functions and are out to embarrass him. On international news, Ramaphosa sets to ease the lockdown. We do know that in South Africa, they're on a total lockdown, and you're only allowed to go out within very restricted areas and only to get foodstuff. But according to this particular article, the president might announce an ease of the lockdown. Pompeo criticizes South Africa for taking Cuban doctors, and this again is, of course, as they talk about the fight of the coronavirus. Facebook surges on user growth. Twitter offers data to researchers. Again, social media is taking a turn, and of course, we have social media leading in terms of growth of how things are turning out. So Facebook is surging in terms of users, as of course now we have many other platforms that are coming up for the younger ones. We know we have TikTok that is taking the younger ones by storm, but Facebook has been fairly stable for a certain age group, but that is taking a surge. Google task force seek to fight bad COVID-19 ad. And there's a lot more that you can look at internationally right there. That's where we wind up our newspaper review at 25 minutes after 7. This is Morning Express. We're going to take a short break, but do stay with us. We have more coming up right here